Welcome to Relationships as Spiritual Practice, Bridging the Secular and Spiritual. In this special episode, join LaShelle and guests, Matthew Letterman and Mark Idetta, both of whom offer this work to others and study with wise heart, ask questions, and offer their own discoveries as they cultivate this important aspect of mindful, compassionate dialogue, consciousness, and skill.
Hello, thank you for being with us here today. I'm so happy to be back here with Matt and Mark. And today we're talking about competency number 4, which is self-empathy, mindful, compassionate dialogue competency number 4. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Yeah. I'm just excited to hear what came up for you as you took time to specifically sit with and put your attention on this competency, live this particular ability in you.
Lead the charge, Matt.
Lead the charge. One thing that stood out for me was when you talked about people saying self-empathy doesn't work. And I definitely have had those thoughts in the past. And one of the shifts in my consciousness was slowing down and sort of softening and letting the empathy space and time to do its work and sticking with it in that empathic space, and I was just curious, what do you find prevents people from softening into this space and this type of consciousness? I've heard you say, don't, if you go quick, right, or you go back into problem solving or whatever it is, but really valuing that slowing down and softening. What is the way to get that into our bodies to trust that wisdom?
Well, that's a big question. Well, I think just lots of experiences doing it and being successful and defining success as connection, of course. And I would make a guess that most people need support for that that's not a thing that you do by yourself and expect that you'll stay focused and stay in your body and slow down. Boy, I could never have done that as a person starting on their path in my teen years and 20s. There's just so much momentum around distraction and moving quickly. And then if you have critic voices interrupting the process, it's just too much. Yeah.
So maybe getting some really wonderful empathic experiences from other people or with other people is the first step to really being able to successfully do self-empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is going to sound like a little commercial, but it's not meant to be. And so often when I've written in my gems over the years, I've heard you say, get some empathy from someone else, but I don't have anyone to give me empathy. And so I just want to say that I'm so grateful that on Wise Heart we have this program called MCD Companions, and you can sign up and just receive empathy. And your first session is just a gift. So there's these opportunities. But if you already have someone in your life who can just give you empathy, wow, that's fantastic. And and to really set your intention before you share with someone, I'm really looking for empathy. I'm really wanting to welcome all my experience, all the parts of me, and just be with them and see what each part needs and feel my feelings, right? Set the dialogue up that way with your intention really clearly.
Yeah. I like that, because there's something, as you were talking, I just thought to myself, when I want empathy from someone else and I experience really sweet empathy, it takes some time. When I do the self-empathy process, I'm like, in 15 seconds, why is it not working? Like there's this disconnect that self-empathy, if anything, probably takes a little more time to protect that and hold that space. And I'm trying to make it work in 30 seconds, 60 seconds feels almost like a lot of time.
Really good point. Yeah, time and repetition too. Like, to me, sometimes I use the metaphor of knocking on the door of your subconscious. Like, you can't just knock, wait 15 seconds and walk away. and expect your subconscious to say, here are all the gifts that you were looking for. So you knock, you do it consistently. Maybe you have a ritual once a week or every morning. You have 15 minutes of
Mm.
self-connection. And then you set aside a longer time, right? Like you're saying, Matt. So you knock on the door and you're willing to wait patiently for what arises. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I like that, making, you know, holding 10 minutes of space for
Yeah.
your self-empathy practice process.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why it hasn't dawned on me until this minute, but
Uh-huh.
to hold more space for my self-empathy.
Yeah. A patience and a spaciousness there, setting
Yeah.
aside that time.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then that practice of
Yeah.
just like, giving empathy to other people, giving empathy to yourself,
Yeah.
takes some practice. And for most, I imagine it's not a habitual process. It takes a little time to feel natural again.
Yeah, really. And the way I teach self-empathy, it's much more than identifying feelings and needs. So there's many steps, right? There's just noticing and saying, oh, I feel disconnected around something. Maybe you don't even know what it is, right? Oh, I feel disconnected. And then immediately trying a regulation strategy. We have a whole list of regulation strategies on the free handouts on the website. Regulating first, and then beginning to enter into feelings, needs. What was the stimulus? What story did I tell myself?
Mm.
And when I've landed with that need, well, how do I want to care for that need? Really specific and doable. It's a lot to do. It's a lot of skills that most of us have not grown up with.
Right. And I'm hearing that I've heard people talk about presence and accompaniment,
Yeah.
and that to me is what's happening before you're guessing feelings and needs. And for me, when I first started with
Ah.
self-empathy, it was guessing feelings and needs, but I missed that sort of presence and accompanying myself in my moment. I would I got to get the feeling, and then I got the need right, and now I should be
Uh-huh.
feeling better, and not, so
Yeah. 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 Right. Thanks, Matt, for just pointing that out. Maybe there's more than just you that learned self-empathy that way. Oh, self-empathy is just looking at my list, identifying my feelings and needs. Right. It's that physiological emotional regulation that allows that connection to feelings and needs. It's like the foundation from which, when you identify them, oh, it's more than just circling words on a list.
right.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
the feelings and needs words, when you're in that other state that I'm hearing you describe, to me are almost just enough words to keep sort of holding that state through the flow that it would go, right? So it's not about guessing. And I know people have talked about this intellectually, that guessing the words right. It's
Yeah.
about it's that process that's happening as you're with yourself. That's really hard, I think, to describe especially when I was first learning self-empathy.
Mm. Mm. The process of being more fully with yourself, is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And that using the feelings and needs words, just like with empathy with other people, is more of it's less about the words or getting the words right. And I've heard people say that, but
Mm.
it's really, there's something about experiencing that. And it's just hard to get across, even when you were doing
Mm.
empathy with others. But now I'm
Mhm.
hearing now we have to do it with ourselves, which is an added level of difficulty, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think I hear you saying that there's that stage of integration in which when you see a feeling on a list, something resonates in your own being, like, oh, I feel that resonance. I have that level of awareness and connection with myself that some part of you naturally says yes, not a mental yes, but a
Right.
bodily and
That's it.
emotional yes.
That's it. And that word is simply a vehicle to get that body
Yeah.
sort of opening and recognition of that experience.
Yeah, it opens a door.
Yeah. And then
Absolutely.
that process what I'm hearing is the self-empathy process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or, right. So, yeah.
Yeah, and of course we're focusing on words right now, but I just want to acknowledge there's so many modalities in the world that help open the heart, the emotional body, the spirit. dancing, drumming, like the list goes on, a long, long list. So I just want to acknowledge
Mm.
this baseline of what helps us open to our own being. And there's a lot of modalities for that. And this is one. Yeah.
You think powerful music,
Yeah.
and lyrics that really touch
Yeah.
would
Absolutely.
fall along that? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Movement, types of movement. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Mark, I saw you were leaning forward there.
I, I wanted to add to the piece about how words can help our process of self-empathy along. When we were discussing the fact that the words can sometimes unlock maybe deeper meaning within our bodies, I'm
Hmm.
also experiencing in my own practice how the words can just be a sweet form of accompaniment to the experience.
Oh, what?
So,
The experience?
accompaniment.
Accompaniment. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a resonant relationship. It's
Mm-hmm.
where if the feelings or the sensations in the body happen to be a certain flavor, and as I kind of sit with the heat of that and just kind of feel that, it's just saying a word like distress or sadness or despair, there seems to be sometimes a resonance just in saying the word that
Yeah.
might be the felt sense.
Yeah.
Um, but Matt and I were having a conversation earlier about how sometimes when we're trained to use a list of feelings and needs to try to get into our experience, how sometimes in an effort to try to give ourselves self-empathy, we'll just start maybe making needs guesses or feelings guesses or trying to give
Yeah.
ourselves acknowledgement for certain experiences prematurely
Mm.
so that we're not almost letting our bodies talk to us. We're not,
Mm. Kind of
it's
like a
almost,
mental bypassing happens.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
like a,
I don't want to feel my body. Let me just look at a list.
And there's an
or,
element of getting it, like trying to get it right. Right. Like
Yeah.
I think empathy, when
Uh,
you're doing self-empathy, there's an intention of I want to feel better. So if you're trying to get somewhere,
mhm,
you're
yes.
also right. You see, like it's a
Yeah,
little
it's a
bit
very
usually
mental kind of, and naturally, because we have a lot of conditioning. If I understand something mentally, then I'll feel better. That's
right.
the propaganda that we've received. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And even just a desire for protection. Sometimes we'll just try to come in quickly
Yeah.
to so that we don't have to fully feel the pain
Yeah.
of whatever is coming up.
Of
Um,
course.
Want to heal it, make it feel better.
Yeah.
So so sometimes I'll catch myself trying to give myself acknowledgement for a certain experience before really letting my body have its full say.
I just love that point. That is beautiful. I really like it, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy to just kind of bypass, right? Bypass what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Gonzalez, I think you're assessor, correct?
Mm-hmm. He was my assessor. Yeah. He's passed
He
on
really,
now.
mm,
The
he
beautiful
really,
service in the world. Go ahead.
such profound wisdom.
Yeah.
He emphasized a lot the compassionate presence element to self empathy, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. For someone just starting, that's high. That's hard to do. Yeah. Often I just recommend just like a hand on the heart. I'm suffering. I'm sad that I'm suffering. This is really hard. Right? Just naming the suffering. This is painful. Naming is one of those ways to keep your attention there and prevent that bypassing that you're talking about, just to name what's happening.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
How do you frame self-empathy in your world, Lachelle, without the sort of holding on to trying to feel better? right? Like, in other
Mm.
words, I find a lot of times people want to do self-empathy when they're in pain and like, oh, let's do self-empathy, almost like it's to fix it.
Yeah.
So, but to me, that would that take you out of this that empathic presence, or does that make sense?
Yeah. I love that, Matt. Yeah. I think we could say the first purpose of self-empathy is to locate yourself in the ability to witness what's happening,
Hmm.
not to feel better. Because we know that as we get into a rough place, we start to lose our skills. The more that rough place takes over, the more we act from that. And then those actions are typically not skillful and create more suffering.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the purpose of self-empathy is so that you're not possessed by that reactivity or disconnect, right? That you're able to stand in the middle of it, or we could say a little bit bigger than it, and just say, oh, this is happening.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Wow,
Because,
I just had
yeah.
a shift in my body hearing that, right? Because
Ah,
up until now, it's self-empathy is to feel better,
oh,
and it put pressure on self-empathy, and it's
yeah.
and then there's an assessment: is this working? Why is it not working? But if it's just
Mm,
like, oh, this
there's
is
a
an opportunity
fail
to be
too,
present,
possible
right?
failure.
Right,
Yeah. Scary.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then it's like this isn't working. And then there's more pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
it's just about being present, because that makes life more wonderful, and you have more access to your skills,
Hmm.
there's just a different. It's not as weighty. It just feels like, oh, I'd like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It would be like having a friend come alongside you, and rather than just sitting with you and keeping you company in your state, they're trying to make you feel better. And they're
Mm.
trying to do it by
Mm.
using feelings and needs words. And
Yeah.
and you
And
can
they're
kind of sense that.
misattuning.
Yes.
Right. You can kind of sense like you're just trying to make me feel better, but I just really want to be here.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
be in this state. Will you spend time with me here? And sometimes I feel like parts of us really just want to have that presence. They want our company without wanting to be changed or fixed or empathized with. They just
Mm.
want our presence.
Beautiful,
Um,
Mark. Well, don't go on because I really want to emphasize what you said. Because I don't take it for granted that most people know what's happening when empathy isn't landing.
mm,
Right. So I think what you said is super important that when someone's trying to give you empathy to get you to feel better, they're probably bypassing a lot of your experience. Number one, that's not getting seen or understood. Right. And the other really important thing you said was that what we really want in our heart of hearts is companionship in our experience. It's not to feel better immediately.
mm,
It seems like it's just to get to better, but we really just want companionship.
yeah.
And then at the deepest level, we want to cultivate this faith. And if we understand that, then we start to know and we start to learn, just with companionship, things unfold and untangle.
Yeah.
I have a new perspective. And then eventually I do feel better, of course, because that bigger me is having space to see what's happening. All the parts get their space to live and be seen, celebrated, loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. The image of, I mean, as I hear you say this, Lachelle, is just having an internal family where the goal isn't to try to make the parts feel better. It's just to be a warm witness to them where they're
Yeah.
at, how they're expressing themselves, what it is they might be wanting, what they currently believe, and how I can resonate with their current belief.
Yeah.
And it's not about going in with a fire hose and trying to make them all feel better. It's about just simply being present to where they're at,
Yeah.
feeling the energy of their emotion, maybe
Yeah.
using words if I feel like that can resonate with their experience,
Hmm.
that kind of a
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah. And the
Um,
second part, I just because I hear some of my students saying, but sometimes I just want to feel better. And
right.
so I want to say, like, all that you just described, Mark, if you're really with someone who can attune well to you, that can happen in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
right? If someone is just like, zip, they get you and they say the thing and they have the expression and they allow it fully, like, ah, yes, you get me. Now tell me what to do, right? So so that attunement, that being with also includes now you've received companionship and now we can look for a solution, right? Because you're fully on board. The whole you is here, all your skills, all your parts,
Yeah.
and now we can brainstorm solutions or strategies. But there's no rule about the being with takes hours or days. Sometimes it takes seconds or minutes. And
Absolutely.
we're
Yeah.
attuning to that shift where the person goes, "Ugh, you got me." That's totally it. And
Yeah.
sometimes that leads to the unfolding of something else. And sometimes that person is like, "That's enough getting me for now. Let's move on to what to do." So
Yeah.
just that big space for that.
Mm.
And the willingness to sort of focus on that connection with yourself, and then trust that from there,
Yeah.
once that softening happens,
Yeah.
strategies and next steps will emerge. But the self-empathy process to me is
Yeah.
focusing on that quality connection with yourself and trusting
Beautiful.
that the rest will come.
Yeah, beautiful, Matt. I think you're highlighting something really important because if you don't know that the way you do, Matt, some people might say, "Oh, thank you. You really got me. Now, do you have some advice?" And they'll still look externally
Mhm.
because they don't know that that new state that they're in actually will channel quite a bit of wisdom and new ideas and creativity.
Mm.
And so hopefully their companion says, "Well, let's just slow down. And do you want to check in if a new idea comes to you?"
Right.
Right, before jumping into advice giving. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Another dynamic that's coming up for me right now is how there are times when we get so taken by a voice or a part of ourselves that um, all we can see is through that lens,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So I loved how you really made that clear in the fourth video on self-empathy.
Uh,
uh, Notes are right here. Being caught in a smaller identity, basically
yeah,
in that trance state, as you put
yeah.
it.
And just for the listeners, Mark is referring to the 90-minute workshop on self-empathy that's on our website. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea that Matt and I were talking about earlier um, was that when we find ourselves fully uh, consumed by a voice or a part of ourselves where we're now within that worldview, we can only
Yeah.
think within that worldview, we
Yeah.
can only feel within that worldview, that giving ourselves empathy in that spot lands very well. We don't have the capacity to almost be an observer. We
Yeah.
just, in some sense, by giving ourselves empathy, we're beginning that process of, in IFS, they would call, in internal family systems, they would call that unblending with a part,
Yeah.
where we're beginning to try to bring back that warm witness by giving ourselves direct empathy. But then there are other times when we're not fully consumed by that voice or that part, where we're giving it most externally. Oh, are you feeling maybe a sense of loss
Mm-hmm.
right now and confusion because you would love so much more clarity about how to
Mm-hmm.
go forward, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
we're almost able to talk to that voice or that part from a perspective of a wise, warm witness.
Yeah, when we're in a more expansive perspective and yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the locus of attention can sometimes shift depending upon our
Mm-hmm.
level of charge. Can we externalize these voices and give them warmth as if they were external entities of ourselves, or are we just simply trying to unblend a little bit from a part that's totally consumed our very
Mm-hmm.
essence in that moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our thought, Mark, when we were talking was, and we want to see what you thought, LaShelle, was by starting with this self-empathy process, if you're all blended or all the different needs are all sort of tangled up in the feelings, will allow that to start unblending or separating to where you can empathize with the individual pieces
Mhm.
more effectively. Is that
Mhm.
sort of your experience?
Well, yes, and I guess I would say, like, the most difficult beginning stage is to recognize what's the difference between being located in an expansive perspective where all my parts are welcome and being in a part. That's a really big stage of transformation to go through.
Hmm.
And right there, I would say it probably doesn't happen unless you have an intentional practice of regulation, mindfulness, meditation, something that is naturally expansive for you, dance, right? Unless there's some sort of practice in your life that naturally brings you into a more sense of expansion, it's going to be impossible to know that you're in a trance of a single part, or that you're just like sequentially going from one trance to the next trance, depending on the part.
Yeah.
So self empathy is impossible basically without that.
Awareness.
That awareness. Yeah, thank you.
And yeah. And I just want to, well, let me just stop there. Mark, is there more you wanted to add to that, or I wanted to?
I was going to put a plug in for meditation and how that seems to be a great way to develop
Yeah.
that warm witness. But anyway, that was
Yeah.
I can put that on the back burner.
That's, hey, plugs for meditation. We'll take it.
Why not?
So, but before I have another point or question, I just wanted to sort of highlight again, at least for me, it's really powerful to different. Like I knew all this for empathy with other people,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, I treated self-empathy differently.
Yeah.
So don't have an agenda, witness, accompany, all that was in there, and I could do that with others. But I don't know why with self-empathy, I see it as, no, I got to make myself feel better. So I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to point out that again, that for whatever reason, that's really helpful. And I imagine there's people listening that
Yeah.
might see self-empathy with that intention too.
Yeah. Thank you for coming back to that. So important.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people report they can hold space. It seems like they can hold space for people, other people better than for themselves. So
Yes.
it
Yes.
makes sense.
Mark, you were joking earlier, which I thought was funny, is that we have to get more comfortable with talking to ourselves.
I think we
Yeah.
should normalize that. My
Yeah.
boys, I'm washing dishes now, and I'll just have conversations, just giving myself empathy out loud. I've gotten beyond that shame part where the boys can hear me talk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping when they're older and they're adults, they'll think, "Oh, yeah, Dad was always giving himself this warmth and this
Oh, good.
acceptance and always
I
trying to
love it.
understand his experience." Oh, so Mark, you're feeling some tension in your face. Tell me more. You know, and I'll just be saying this out loud. And my boys don't even look at me anymore. They just say, "Dad's talking to himself."
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your
Beautiful.
What are your thoughts on normalizing talking to ourselves, LaShelle?
Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, especially if the talking is some attempt to be compassionate, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
we already talk to ourselves all the time. It's just a matter of doing it out loud,
Mm,
hopefully with a compassionate witness.
yeah. Yeah.
I like that point. We all have our judges that are talking to us, and
Yeah,
often not very compassionately. Why
right.
not throw in some compassionate voices too?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And along the lines of having those voices talking to us, having critical parts talking to us, I feel like one of the because I'm currently doing a lot of studies with internal family systems. One of the
Mhm.
strengths that I see from this particular therapeutic model
Mhm.
is how we don't have any bad parts.
Thanks for naming
So
that. So important.
yeah, yeah, and so that critical voice,
Mhm.
what can happen is when we have this critical voice, maybe criticizing us for doing something or not doing something,
Mhm.
what can happen is that we develop a relationship with this critical voice where we are now judging ourselves for having a critical voice. So we have a critical voice, then we have a judge that's on top of our critical voice, and now we have this multi-layered experience going on in our systems.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
And so making peace with the critical voice by saying, "Oh my goodness, you're trying to help me by acknowledging its intention. You're trying to contribute to
Mhm.
my life right now. You want me to get this right, or you don't want me to look like a fool in front of everybody, or
Mhm.
you really want there to be more effectiveness and more proficiency here. Is that what I'm getting?" And then the part that might be judging the critical voice, we can say, "Oh, and I see that you're concerned with the presence of this voice, that you somehow think it's less than spiritual to have a part of me that's judging myself."
Mhm.
And so it's like addressing these different voices that come up with this warmth and acceptance and acknowledging the good intention behind
Yeah.
their
Identifying the
contribution.
life-serving need that it's really trying to promote for us.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Good. So we ready to move on to another?
Yeah, you got something else, Matt? Go for it.
Yeah. So Mark, did you want me to share something else, or did you want to share something?
Oh, no, I'm feeling good with that last point.
Okay. So another point that you hit home that really stood out was that you can have sort of multiple needs and truths at the same time of conflict, and to be empathizing with all of those. And there's a tendency to sort of, hey, there's in conflict versus like one is right and the other is wrong, and like, so for example,
Yeah.
just to give an example to make that,
Yeah.
is that comes up often for saying, hey, I can, with my wife, for example, with Alona, right? I can feel hurt by something you did, or stimulated by something, hurt by something you did, and I can trust that you care about me at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think the more we don't have to put ourselves into either you hurt me on purpose and I got to prove that, or you care about me and I have to suppress my hurt, right? So to me, the empathic process makes space for, there's multiple needs can be true or coming up or dealt with at the same
Mhm.
time. Does that, I can have
Mhm.
pain and trust that you care. Right.
Mm.
Does that make sense? That, I don't know if you remember saying that, but I thought that really stood out as
Yeah.
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, so important. And important, I think that's basically what you've been saying, Mark, about parts. And it's so important to be able to say that out loud to someone. A part of me is really angry right now about what happened, has a need for fairness. And another part remembers that you really love me, like you really love me and care about me. And I'm not ready to talk yet because I'm just in the middle of those two parts, trying to get some more self-connection.
Mm.
Yeah.
And isn't that a disarming way of approaching someone with pain that was stimulated?
Yeah, right.
Felt really hurt because I think that part was really wanting some acceptance and some warmth.
Yeah.
Very disarming because it allows the person to say, "Oh, it's just a part of them. It's not all of them."
Yeah, exactly. So important. So important.
Yeah. That came up. I find examples helpful, and that came up, for example, hey, we have this big thing that we're going to have to spend money on, and I'm really worried about having to spend this money.
Yeah.
So then there's all of a sudden tightening up, right? And that
Yeah.
self empathy is what allows me to see both. There's more than one. Either I have to be okay with the money and suppress my concerns about money and say, oh, I care about you, spend whatever you want,
Yeah.
or hey, I'm really worried about the money spend, bills are tight, right? And then, now you can't do that, whatever it
Yeah.
was that you needed to do. To be able to empathize and say, okay, hey, there's
Right.
multiple needs. I have a
Yeah.
need for financial security, and I have a need for you to get the care that you want. And
Right.
right now, I don't even have a strategy. I just want to connect to both of those.
Mhm.
Right. And we can do that. If we do that internally at first, we make space for it, I think. And if
Mhm.
we don't have that self empathy process, we're sort of picking suppress mine, just be caring for her, or don't be caring for her and meet your need for, hey, we can't spend this money, right? So to me,
Right.
that's another real big value of the empathic self-empathy process.
Right. Beautiful. And maybe from what you said, Matt, we could define inner conflict as the impulse and accompanied by a thought perhaps of some part of me is wrong and some part of me is right, and I have to choose.
Right.
That any time we're feeling tension, that's at least one thing that's probably going on.
Right. And you gave that
Yeah.
example in your video with integrity and then people's strategy to meet their need for integrity. And all of a sudden there's that tightness, just recognizing, and that's the accompaniment, right? Hey, I'm noticing tightness. I want to be present with that so that eventually I can not only connect with myself, but then with the other person.
Uh-huh.
But I like that example was really powerful with,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you're attached to a single strategy to meet multiple needs on the table. So yeah, self-empathy allows us to connect to all of that.
Yeah. To expand what we
Yes.
can be present for and with.
That example that you gave at the end of the video, where you had internal conflict, and then you had those two parts, one that wanted to take the job to meet certain needs, and then the other part of the other voice that didn't want to take maybe the promotion because you wanted to spend more time with the family.
Uh-huh.
And the modeling that you were doing by really empathizing with the needs of the one part to maybe want to take the job, what beliefs might be at play there,
Yeah.
really empathizing with the other part within ourselves that wants to spend more time with the family, wants to have more contribution that way. That
Mm-hmm.
whole process of giving empathy to those different parts in us,
Yeah.
um, was
I,
something.
I think the tricky part there I want to name, you're naming it and you've been practicing with it, so it seems clear to you. And what I would say is it's not so clear which part is which for people who are beginning with that process.
Oh,
And what I've noticed in coaching people is I say, just speak from that part. And they start speaking, and another part comes in, and they're not aware that another part came in and started speaking.
Mm.
And so then you can imagine it just gets so tangled, right?
oh, mhm.
And so that first part is really learning and feeling, oh, did I shift over to a different part of me? And if so, can I come back or can I get out another piece of paper and write what that part says, however you organize it? But that's maybe the beginner stage of how do I even sort out different parts of me because it's all jumbled in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
That beginning stage of just differentiation. It seems like
Mhm.
there's one part of me that's wanting this, and
Mhm.
then maybe another one that wants this.
Mhm.
And really giving that same care to each part and maybe even holding the tension of
Mhm.
within our internal family of just saying,
Mhm.
yeah, and then just being at peace with the fact that you might have different needs and different strategies, and we may be at a deadlock inside, but there can be warmth and there can be spaciousness around.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, we when you say deadlock, I would say we may not yet have enough connection for there to be flow and creativity and expansiveness. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
I would
Yeah.
imagine, Lachelle, does your experience that care for the other person is usually mixed in there as one of the needs? So, like when I'm feeling that torn or tension or pressure, there's a part of me that wants you to know that I really care about you. And there's another part that wants to do something else that I'm worried is not going to meet the need for care for you or something. So I think sometimes it's helpful for me, and you used to do that when you would coach me, is give me like a little sort of cheat sheet of things to be sort of on the
Ah.
lookout for, right? So that
Mm.
need for maybe there's some common needs that lead to, you know, parts going in different directions or stimulating that
Mm.
tension. And I'm just offering
Mm.
up that I think care is a big one, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let me say that back to you and
Yeah.
add something. Key phrase for self-empathy is I feel torn. Because I
Mhm.
feel torn allows you to begin to have more than one part.
Right.
Mm,
And then usually, yeah, I think there is a list like that, Matt. Thanks for saying that. Usually there's the thing itself, like I want to quit going to this group or I want to make this big purchase. There's that thing that's not so normal. That's just an event coming up. And then there's either and I'm worried about the impact on the other person, need for care, contribution, or I'm worried about acceptance or belonging,
Mm.
right, as a tender need. I would say those tender needs that we've described in other videos, perhaps, I'll go on that other part of I'm torn.
Yeah.
But care and acceptance would be my top two that I would get curious about for folks.
Yeah. So I like that. It's helpful to have a couple needs to be looking for when so to notice I'm feeling torn, that's a big step.
Yeah.
And then there's, hey, I'm torn. There's probably care or acceptance or both on one side.
Yep.
And then on the other side of torn is maybe something, this other thing that you described.
Yeah.
And there's room for both to exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think is really, there's like a softening. Okay, we don't have to pick between one or the other.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we can just say it out loud to the other person. Right? And we don't have to do all that by ourselves inside. How can I care for you and still do this thing? Like, I got to figure it out. Like, we just put ourselves on a little tiny island.
Right.
Not necessary.
Right.
You can just say out loud, boy, I want to do this, but I'm worried about the impact on you.
Right.
What comes up for you when you imagine me doing this?
Yes.
Just open the dialogue with that. Like you were saying earlier, Matt, really. Yeah.
And opening that dialogue actually meets those needs for care and acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. It's already a form of care.
Right? You're already going down that path so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So there was I don't know if there's more on this. I know your time flies, but there was one other thing that you pointed out that I thought was so valuable. So I wanted to first, Mark, did you have more to say on that by any chance?
I didn't know.
All right. So the one other thing that you said when you were helping people in the video create anchors.
Mm.
And what I noticed was that when I've done anchors in the past, it was an intellectual anchor. And you spend a lot of time, right? Or I spent a little bit of time in the body, but it was like you spent a lot of time really getting that body experience. And I heard you mention a few senses, to make 3, I think you said was a nice number.
Mm-hmm.
And I for whatever reason, I know you've talked about it, written about it, but to really spend time solidifying or cementing that anchor as an experience in your world versus just sort of an intellectual understanding or a thought so that was very powerful to shift anchors to make them more valuable for me.
Good. Yeah. And so for people who are listening, don't know the term anchor, we do an anchor process in our classes in which we help someone enter into a peak experience and then find something tangible in that experience that they could return to in their consciousness that would help them expand in a moment of contraction and return to the situation in front of them with that expansive sense that allows them to access skills and compassion, wisdom. Yeah.
And when you say peak experience, what do you mean by that?
Peak experience, like an experience of connection, expansion. Yeah. Maybe some people would use the word confidence, a moment when I was in the zone or I was confident. Yeah. Flow states.
So flow, really grounded, self-connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then trying to use that and be able to bring that into reactive experiences.
Right. Maybe there's a particular memory or an image or words or a belief that in a given moment of tension, we can just go leave the situation at hand, internally go and focus on that, and whoop, it opens that expansive network and allows us to come back to the situation. More skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. It's an important part of the self-empathy process.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we do self-empathy without being anchored in that expansive perspective, it could be your critic that's going through the self-empathy process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There will be more suffering.
So what would I know we're running out of time here, but what would it look like for a critic to do self-empathy? What would that sound like? I'm trying to.
Well, I think it would probably be a lot about tone.
Oh,
Okay, so you're feeling angry and disappointed again because
You
it's
know,
your
it's a,
tender need for acceptance again, right? There might be little things like again in there.
I found with maybe a caretaking part that I have
Mm-hmm.
that it'll come in quickly with self-empathy or with acknowledgement for an experience because it's not necessarily coming from that warm, welcoming witness or from, as they would say in internal family systems,
Yeah.
from self.
Yeah.
It's coming in to try to
Feel better, maybe quick.
manage the pain,
Yeah.
feel better.
Pain
But
management
it's like
system. Nice, Mark. I like that.
so it's subtle because you think because you're coming in with warmth and saying, "Oh, would you like some acknowledgement for how difficult this experience is?" It's like the words and even the tone can be warm and sweet, but it's cutting off the experience of the body in a way that's trying to
Mm-hmm.
preserve it from more pain. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Might be mental
so
or it might be quick would be another sign.
quick. Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
quick. Yeah. Or if it's not landing, maybe again, a part of me is just trying to come in and make me feel better rather than really be with me and listen to what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you to move on.
Right.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yep. Come
Feel
on, get
better.
over it. Let's move
Yeah.
on. Get yourself together. We got a big day ahead. I don't
Right.
have time for this attitude.
I said all the right words. What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it can even come from care. Like, I think that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can have a
Sure.
warm, loving part of yourself that just that's maybe from past experience where you have a loving figure that they wanted to make you feel better, and so you can sometimes connect love and care with making someone feel better, but it's so subtle sometimes how we'll come in
Yeah.
with warm words or with accompaniment and still not meet us where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. That attunement to what's happening in the present moment is a very subtle skill, subtle sense of presence, right? That we're
yeah.
looking for.
Takes time and practice to notice it, even
Yeah,
really.
absolutely. Mm. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, warmth and care are so helpful. And what comes first is the attunement, the willingness to be present with what's happening to the extent that that person wants to be present. Also, not forcing that, right? There's no have to about you have to be present with all your parts. Huh? Maybe not right now. Maybe you don't have the resources for that. Maybe you'll become flooded if we allow more parts to come up, right? So there's a management there. Yeah. Yeah, this is yeah, I wanna just rename that we've talked a lot about it's so important to be present with everything, and we don't want to force that either. We
Yeah.
maybe don't have all the resources we need to be present with all our parts. So that has its own organic unfolding and healing journey as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there, you would say that could look like some level of acceptance that this is as present as I have capacity to do in the moment, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, or if you were helping someone be present and they said, I can't look at that part, then hopefully you would say, okay, must not be time to look at that part.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a you in there that is saying, don't go there. So we can talk to the voice who says don't go there and give that voice empathy too.
Mhm.
Not with the agenda of getting that voice to calm down, but just because now that's the part that's speaking. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, it's a lot. It's so easy to get caught up in our agendas. It's just saying all that's reminding me like, oof. There's a lot of conditioning around that. So lots of compassion for
Yes.
those
Yeah.
habits of what am I supposed to be doing? Right? What's the right thing? Such a conditioned voice.
Yeah.
Agendas. A lot of agendas.
Yeah, I have an agenda. So we just get bigger and accept that. Oh, there's my agenda self. That's okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Anything else for the two of you before we start to close for today?
Hmm.
Hmm. I guess maybe a final word or thought from me on this topic is just the wonder and the beauty of really cultivating a beautiful relationship with ourselves, and how it really is practice that takes time, that we can do anywhere we want, that we can carve out time for. But it's just starting small and starting where we're at, and just
Yeah.
really leaning into our experience and noticing when our face feels flushed, and
Mm.
making note of that and saying, is there more that you want to tell me? Or,
Mm.
but it can just be something that's organic, and something, like you said, where we're not trying to push ourselves to face certain fears before our system is ready for it. But it's just a relationship. And um, that takes time and practice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Beautiful. Yeah.
Hmm.
Enjoy that. Anything for you, Matt?
Well, I was gonna say I'm gonna try and start talking to myself while I'm doing the dishes, and I think I'm gonna start small and do it in the car by myself, and then I'll
Uh-huh.
progress to dishes in front of the family. But I think that, and I joke, but I think that's
Okay.
actually fun to not only model for the
Yeah.
family, to do for myself,
Yeah.
because I want self-empathy to work in the heat of the moment, but
Mm.
just like, that's the hardest time that's where you need the most skill. So I like this idea of practicing doing dishes,
Hmm.
checking in with myself.
Hmm.
This has been very, very valuable. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Yeah. Thank you both. Yay. Yay. May we all have a more loving and kind relationship with our own experience, with ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for all that the two of you are doing in the world to grow and learn and spread healing and connection.
Mm. Mm.
And thank you for everybody who's listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time and your own intention to heal, grow, transform. May it ripple out and out, radiating love from my heart to yours.
Mhm.
See you next time.
You can learn more about Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and find free resources, live offerings, and self-paced workshops online at www.wiseheartpdx.org. You can also connect with Wise Heart on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, or by emailing info@wiseheartpdx.org.